Hi, greetings, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Well, our look at Season 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine now continues on with the episode Blood Oath. In this bar, Quark complains to Odo that an elderly drunken Klingon is monopolizing one of the holosuites, and also refighting the Battle of Kla de Kelbrocht, a battle the Klingons won over the Romulans a century ago. He is only paid for an hour, but has been in the holosuite for 3. With Odo standing by, Quark shuts off the power, and the Klingon core starts out with a bottle of Brashanti ale in his hand. He lunges drunkenly at Quark, but Odo pacifies him by telling him a victory celebration is awaiting him, and leads him to a holding cell to sleep it off. Koloth, Quark's friend, comes to bail him out. However, when he sees Quark still quite drunk, he furiously tells Odo to keep him. Shrugging, Quark passes out again, while Odo rolls his eyes. In Ops, Odo brings her a report to Major Kira and apologizes for being late, as it's been a Klingon afternoon. He goes on to explain he put Kor in a self-republic intoxication and Koloth's failed attempt to bail him out. Odo later reveals to Kira that Kor is singing battle songs and announcing loudly his repertoire, Kor Dahar, master of the Klingons. Dax overhears the name at her station and has Kor released. Dax and Kor go to the Replomat where they find Koloth eating cake, and Kor comments him on practicing his fighting skills with his food. Koloth says that a sharp knife takes sharp eye and Kor just calls it luck. Koloth says it is insulting that the Federation would send a science officer to greet him with Dax commenting that Koloth never liked the Federation and calls him by his nickname of Klingon, Iceman Koloth. Kor asks Koloth if he recognizes Dax. Dax reveals to him and to Koloth that she is her old friend and comrade, Dax, Coruscant Dax, having been the last host of the symbiote now inside her. Kor is delighted that their old friend now inhabits a beautiful woman's body, but Koloth protests that some mistake has been made. Dax realizes that their meeting has been arranged by another old friend, Kang, who arrives and tells them that he's finally found the albino. 81 years ago, the 3 Klingons and Curzon swore a blood oath to hunt down and kill the albino, no matter what. After Dax and some convincing to Kang that she really is Dax, Kang explains he has finally tracked him down to a hideout in the Securus system, and to ensure that no warning causes the albino to flee before they can reach him, Kang killed the traitors who disclosed the location to him. Walking alone with Dax on the upper level of the promenade, Kang muses that times have changed, and nothing is quite the same as it was in the Klingon Empire, not even a blood oath. With that in mind, he tells Zia that she has no obligation on her past host commitments, and firmly releases her from Curzon's oath. While on duty in Ops, Dax asks Kira about her experiences in the Bajoran Resistance and how she felt when she killed the Cardassians. Kira is very uncomfortable talking about those days, but wants to know why Dax is asking. Dax reluctantly explains. The albino was a heinous criminal who led pirate raids on several Klingon and Federation colonies. An old task force commanded by Kang, Kor, and Koloth destroyed his power base. Although many of his followers were captured, the albino escaped and promised revenge of the firstborn children of Kor, Koloth, and Kang. 4 years later, he managed to keep his promise by infecting each of the 3 Klingons' firstborn sons with a deadly genetic virus. Curzon was godfather to Kang's son, who was named Dax in his honor, and swore the oath along the other 3. Kira tries her best to sway Dax from her mission, reminding her that it was Curzon's godson who died, not Jadzia's, and that she should not be expected to keep her former host commitments. Dax is unswayed, telling Kira she still remembers the boy's funeral and how she felt when her godson died. She feels like she owes it to Curzon to fulfill the oath, even if the other Klingons don't expect her to. Kira finishes by answering Dax's original question. When you take someone's life, you lose a part of your own as well. Dax talks to Kor at Quark's, who was joyful as ever. Oh, of course you should come. The splendor of fighting and killing, a blood oath and cause of vengeance, who wouldn't want to come? But when she asks him to speak with Kolk and Kang on her behalf, he hesitates, calling himself an old man whose influence and power are long past. Dax confronts Koloth in a holosuite while he's practicing his bat'leth techniques. He still believes she is too young and fragile to accompany them, so she challenges him to a duel to show him that she still retains Curzon's skill with a weapon. After a few rounds, Koloth concedes that her presence will do honor to their cause, but Kang remains adamant in his refusal. Outside the holosuite in Quark's, Dax presses the matter. Ultimately, Kang doesn't have the right to deny her vengeance against the albino who killed Dex's godson. Angrily, Kang agrees to allow her along, storming, "Come and be damned!" As Dex packs in her quarters, Commander Cisco arrives to preemptively deny her a leave of absence, telling her they cannot condone murder in the name of vengeance, nor can understand why Jadzia feels the need to do so to honor a commitment Curzon made. Dex tells him that Curzon is a part of her, and Curzon understood and embraced the Klingon concepts of honor and vengeance. When Dex begs him not to make her disobey a direct order, Cisco does not prevent her from leaving, but warns her that she shouldn't expect to just return to the station like nothing has happened. Dex responds that the consequences she faces are up to him. Aboard Kang's ship, on the way to Albino's hideaway, the Klingons and Jadzia discuss their strategy. Kang advocates a surprise frontal assault of the compound's main gate. His intelligence indicates that the albino only has 40 guards, and the shotgun of their appearance will give them a decisive advantage. Koloth and Kor endorse the plan and march out of the room triumphantly to sharpen their blades, but Dex stays to confront Kang. Unlike them, she can see that the plan is suicide, and demands to know what Kang is really up to. In fact, she says, if she didn't know better, she'd think Kang had been paid to lure them into a trap. Kang admits when he first learned the albino's location, he visited the system to see if it was true, and was contacted by the albino. The albino offered Kang a glorious battle against 40 of the albino's best warriors that Kang accepted, believing that if he could not kill the albino, he could die trying. Believing that Klingons embrace death too easily, Dax urges him to consider an alternative strategy. Kang insists that the albino's defenses cannot be penetrated by the 4 of them, and victory is impossible. But Dax has the idea of disabling the guard's phasers, but reconfiguring the ship's disruptors to bombard the compound from orbit with tetrion particles. The resulting dampening field will disable any energy weapons inside. Although the Klingons will likewise be able to use their hand disruptors, they have a significant advantage over the guards in hand-to-hand combat. Kang agrees, saying, "Perhaps it's a good day to live." After being down to Sakaris 4, Dax scans the air with her tricord and detects a gravitic mine buried inside the main entrance. The albino obviously never intended to keep his bargain with Kang. On the other hand, the booby trap gives them the advantage, since the albino will be focusing his defenses on the main gate. The Var then quickly work out an alternate plan of attack. Dax will create a diversion by sabotaging the compound's armory, drawing a fair amount of the guards away from the main house, while the Klingons disable the power station, knocking the albino's communications and scanners. However, Kor points out that if the albino lied to Kang about facing him down honorably, he might not be in the compound or even on the planet. Koloth tells everyone to wait for a few minutes while he goes and asks somebody. The others wonder if he's gone insane, but sure enough, he comes back a few minutes later, having stealthily ambushed a very helpful guard who has confirmed the albino's presence. The 4 warriors prepare to split up to fulfill their roles in the attack, and Kang locks hands with his fellow Klingons. "May Kalis guide us on this day of vengeance." After a moment's hesitation, Dax puts her hand on the others. When the armory explodes, the albino realizes that his trap has been outmaneuvered. Before he can order his guards to draw back into the house, the power station is sabotaged, leaving him trapped inside his main hall with his Arcalian aide and only a few guards, with no way to signal to the others and no functioning phasers. The Klingons and Dax storm into the hall and fight his guards hand to hand. Koloth is mortally wounded when a guard stabs him in the back, while Kang fights his way up the stairs through to the albino. The albino manages to mortally wound Kang, but turns to find Dax's bat'leth at his throat. She introduces herself as the former Curzon Dax, and he smirks like she just have it in her to murder him, alluding to the traditional consuming of the enemy's heart once they have been slain. She hesitates, and meanwhile Kang stabs a knife into the albino's back. He falls to the bottom of the stairs to his death. On the surface, he thanks Dax for the act of friendship in letting him have the death blow, but the knowing eyes between long friends hints at the deeper reality. Kang has saved Jadzia from being forced to make the decision to kill the albino. Kang utters, "It is a good day to die," before dying. Dax murmurs sadly, "It's never a good day to lose a friend." The only Klingon left standing, Kor, sings in honor of his fallen comrades as he stands over the body of the dead albino. Dax returns to the station and resumes her post. However, it is clear from both the looks of Kira and Cisco that they may not be able to regard her the same way again. Yay. So anyway, let's take a look at the background information with this episode, beginning with story and script. Peter Allen Field's original story, entitled The Beast, did not feature Kang, Kor, and Koloth. There were to be new characters, but Robert Hewitt Wolfe, a big fan of the original series, suggested using the three most popular Klingons from that series. The idea came up in a conversation between Fields, co-executive producer Ira Stephen Bear, and executive producer Michael Piller. Fields based The Beast on Akira Kurosawa's 1954 film Seven Samurai and John Sturges' 1960 remake of that film, The Magnificent Seven. He modeled Koloth after James Colburn's character of Brit and Kang after Yul Brynner. Kor was based on William Shakespeare's character of Falstaff, who appeared in Henry IV, Part 2. John Colicos was approached by Michael Piller and allowed to give his own input to the script. Colicos commented, quote, "When I started reading the script, I spoke to Michael Piller and I said, I don't really want to play this character because it's totally contradictory to the original Kor. I have a huge following from the original one. If he becomes just a buffoon, then I'll say rather not do it." He said, "No, Kor starts out as a rather dipsy Falstaffian character, but becomes quite heroic in the end." I said, "Let me see the last 2 chapters before I commit myself finally." And then there was a question of whether we should all be killed off, whether this was the last hurrah for the over-the-hill Klingon gang. Piller said they were contemplating keeping one of us alive. I said, "Well, I read the Ishmael who lives to tell the story." When they gave me that, I said, "All right, fine." The writers have toyed with the idea of having the 3 Klingons appear as they did in the original Star Trek, but decided against it. When Michael and Sarah asked why the Klingons now look different, he was told, quote, "Klingons look to be very, very old, and that's a natural physical metamorphosis." Several terms are used in the pronunciation guide in the script, but not in the final script itself. These include Charon, Besh, and Globtul. So anyway, now onto the production of the episode. Before the episode entered production, Junie Leroy Johnson and Ron Surma checked to see if Michael and Sarah, John Colicos, and Lynn Campbell were still acting. They found the first 2 easily, but had difficulty finding Campbell. He was actually doing Star Trek adventures at the time. Quote, We were quite pleased that all 3 of these actors were willing to reprise their roles," said Peter Allen Fields. Regarding the start of filming, William Campbell commented, quote, "I went down there not realizing that they had this aging of 85 or 100 years later. I thought we'd just be older, that we didn't involve with the carbuncle on the head, and the other changes they've done. However, when I walked in there, I said to Rick Berman, someone there said we were going to have to put this makeup on, a la Michael Dorn. And he said, well, yeah, it's 100 years later, and don't ask me why they do it. This is the way Klingons look now, and you've evolved into this. I said fine, but I just thought we were going to come back as the over-the-hill gang type thing. Of course, it had a lot more significance than that. We were all senior officers. We were part of the special quest. I thought they did a phenomenal job with the makeup. Although Michael and Sarah said to me, Bill, I haven't worked in 60 years. This is going to kill me." The interior of the Albinos Fortress was built on Paramount Stage 18. The fortress that was actually built on Stage 18 for the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Masks as Masaka's temple. TNG's Stage 16 was taken up with a Braconian village tech constructed for Thine Own Self. The exterior of the Albinos Fortress was a house in Pasadena designed by Frank Lloyd Wright for Mr. and Mrs. George M. Millard. A model of it, which is blown to show the structure of the compound, was built on Paramount's Van Ness parking lot. To set the mood for the fight sequence, director Winship Kolb had Richard Wagner's Gotterdammerung played on set. The episode's score was performed with extreme gusto. Composer Jens McCarthy noted, quote, "We just went for it." And go for it they did, so yeah. And now finally, onto some trivia surrounding this episode. This episode reunites 3 Klingons from Star Trek the original series, 1 from each season, Kor from Errand of Mercy, Koloth from The Trouble Tribbles, and Kang from Day of the Dove. This episode marks the death of Koloth and Kang. Although Kang later appeared in the Voyager episode Flashback, Kor is the only one of 3 Klingons to survive the events of this episode, though Kolkos was the first of the 3 actors to pass away on March 6, 2000. Campbell died on April 28, 2011, and Atsar on July 31, 2013. John Kolkos reprised his role as Kor in Season 4's The Sword of Kahless and Season 7's Once More Unto the Breach. Cole Meany, Sadiq Al-Fadil, and Carol Lofton do not appear in this episode. The late Christopher Collins previously played another Markalian, Durg, in The Passenger. This was also his last Star Trek episode, as he died from cerebral hemorrhage 77 days after the episode aired. Michael Ansara appeared in DS9 again as Jayal in The Muse. Claudikel Brocht, referred to in this episode, is later revealed in the Odin Prize episode The Augments to be the Klingon name for the Briar Patch, seen in Star Trek Insurrection. Trials and Tribulations later touched upon the issue of the changes in the Klingon's physical appearance, while the Star Trek Enterprise episode Affliction and Divergence ultimately explained why Kang, Koloth, and Kor have the updated Klingon look in Blood Oath. When Kor pulls over the holosuite door at the beginning of the episode, the whoosh sound of the original series doors can be heard. Eddie Mangels and Michael A. Martin's novel Fortune of Fire is a prequel source to this episode, giving more insight into the background of the albino, whose name we learn is Kag, and Corzon's relationship with the Klingons. There was a sequel, a comic book story called Remembrance. Oh, that's interesting. So overall, I think this is a pretty darn good episode, and I do love Klingon stories, so there you go. So yeah. So overall, I give the episode Blood Oath 5 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in a bit as we take a look at the Maquis Part 1. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.